Do you think that anybody wants to watch a movie with some random protagonist who acts like an everyday person? So the only rebuttal people have for this argument that I'm making right now every single time is that the movie isn't out yet and you don't know what it's actually gonna be like.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think McFly, think.
It looks like Ranting for Vengeance has another controversial opinion for us, this time about the new Resident Evil movie. And I'm a big fan of the director of the movie, Zach Cregger, as he recently released one of my favorite horror movies of the last decade, Weapons. I know it's going to be a little bit different from the games, because it's not about any of the main character of the games. But the last time we got one of those, it kind of bombed, and it sucked. So, I'm hopeful for a new push for the Resident Evil franchise, but let's see what Ranting for Vengeance has to say here.
The new Resident Evil movie, if you could even call it that, is certifiably absolutely retarded. Imagine everything that was awesome from the original PS1 Resident Evil games. Now forget about all of that, make the main character some spasticated cock and create a movie that has nothing to do with Resident Evil and is instead generic modern shit.
There's really only 2 scenes, maybe 3 actually, now that I think about it, where there's like proper zombie stuff going on. And
so yeah, it's a love letter to the games.
No thanks, bro.
Before I get into it, if you like these...
So far, his argument is that it's a bad Resident Evil thing because it's not just about the zombies. There are so many other things in Resident Evil besides just the zombie. I mean, like, yes, zombies are always a part of the virus, but there's also so many different variants of monsters and things like that, that reducing Resident Evil itself to just a zombie story, I would say, is reductive of the world building of Resident Evil. I mean, hell, the existence of, like, Nemesis or any of the more imposing, Mr. X, any of the more imposing sort of Resident Evil characters is kind of, like, I guess, part of the blueprint as well. It's not just the zombies.
Me a coffee. So the only rebuttal people have for this argument that I'm making right now every single time is that the movie isn't out yet and you don't know what it's actually gonna be like. Well,
A very fair argument to say. If you're criticizing a movie this harshly and saying that the main character is a cuck or whatever, without the movie even being out or like a decently believable like plot leak or anything, you kind of are just making up fan fiction to be mad at.
when you get the plot trailer and the director himself coming out and telling you that this movie is going to be nothing like Resident Evil, I think it's safe to say that it's just garbage.
Believe it or not, this movie doesn't utilize zombies that much. So, yeah, it's a love letter to the games, which I fully, obsessively love.
Fuck you!
Those two statements are not mutually exclusive. I would say, even as somebody that's no longer a Dead by Daylight fan, that the Dead by Daylight Resident Evil collab is a love letter, at least, to the series of games that each update of that was referencing. And that game, due to its, sort of killer survivor functionality, cannot have a traditional zombie horde mode. But yet, like I said, still feels like a love letter to the franchise.
Before I continue, that's something I'll say. There's a lot of fake fans out there in the modern day, especially for video game franchises like Resident Evil. And I don't really have anything to prove to any asshole watching this video, but just to let you know, I am a real fan of Resident Evil. If you haven't played any of the original PS1 games, or any game that came out before the remakes, then you're not a real Resident Evil fan. And speaking of people who are tourists, we get on to the insufferable fake fan cunt from Hollywood.
His opinion, he's a Resident Evil purist to the extent that he doesn't think that anybody that plays the remakes is a true fan. And I'm not gonna lie, the remakes, even if they do change parts of the gameplay, I can't fault the fan themselves for not playing the original. The remakes are more accessible if you have newer consoles, and not to mention the graphics and the cutscenes of them are great. They are at least worth playing in their own merit, and if the remakes of those games will encourage more people to play the originals, then that's only a good thing. The story and the franchise of Resident Evil has only gotten more popular thanks to the remakes, and now, thanks to the remakes, we've now gotten returns to the classic continuity and more additional sequels. Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9 have all sort of been in this big push to bring back Resident Evil alongside the Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 remake, or RE4 as well.
Zach Cregger, which now gets to make some handicapped fake Resident Evil movie because he made some horror movie that nobody watched.
Objectively untrue. Weapons box office. Let's see, an impressive 270 million globally, including the 151 million domestically, 118 million internationally, made on a $38 million budget. Insanely cheap in comparison to how much it made. So, yeah, it smashed the box office. Massive hit and a sleeper blockbuster. Not a flop. What are you talking about, bro?
We even have to say who was going to be making a Resident Evil movie back when the original games came out. The master of zombie horror movies himself, George A. Romero, was going to make an adaptation of Resident Evil 2 back in the 90s. But screw that, screw great directors like George A. Romero and Sam Raimi, who made these iconic movies that were offensive, had badass male leads like Night of the Living Dead or any one of the Evil Dead movies. Screw all of the great filmmaking and low budget techniques that made those masterpieces. How about we get the most
Weapons, I just brought up, was a low budget horror movie, especially in comparison to, you know, a lot of films today that cost like, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. 38 million in comparison to how much it made is like insanely cheap for Hollywood movies. Him saying that them hiring Zach Cregger is somehow an insult to George Romero or Sam Raimi is just intellectually dishonest. It's not as if, like, they looked past George Romero and Sam Raimi to get Zach. I mean, like, what does Sam Raimi know about Resident Evil? That's not to say that he doesn't have a capacity to learn, but he's, you know, he's an older gentleman. Zach Cregger is a younger director that is actually nostalgic for the games and is a fan of the games. You can hear even in one of the, in the same interview that he keeps playing clips of, I swear he references Resident Evil 4 being his favorite game, which for Resident Evil fans is not even an unpopular opinion at all. So I genuinely don't understand where Ranting For Vengeance is coming from here with this amount of vitriol. One, towards a movie that he hasn't seen. Two, towards a director that made a really good movie in the form of Weapons.
Corporate Hollywood slop movie that looks like every other horror movie that was ever made in the modern day, and we just slap the Resident Evil title onto it and start trying to retcon the lore. And online here you have people who are saying the same thing as me, the fact that this has nothing got to do with Resident Evil and is completely disgraceful and disrespectful to the entire franchise. But
okay, so you're pulling up these tweets from friggin' culture warrior accounts, the blue check mark that just engagement forum on Twitter, like DCCA. T-virus outbreak in the winter, city already decimated, no nuclear bombing of the city. If you don't want to make a Resident Evil movie, just call it something else. We want Spencer Mansion, we want Jill Sandwich. You can make something that is inspired by a video game series without it having to be in the same continuity. The biggest fault of the new Amazon Fallout show is that the continuity makes no sense if you genuinely try to put that show and its events in the timeline with the games. You straight up have to erase all of the agency and decision making of the main characters of the video games, effectively making 3 in New Vegas never happen, in order for the plot of the Fallout TV show to even make sense. If you did a Resident Evil movie that wanted to make any sort of original plot, but then also had to make it canonical to the games, you would be in the exact same boat. I'm fine with them changing plot details, moving up the timeline, whatever, because it is its own continuity. It can still be a great film. This can go on to be its own franchise of amazing films. Hell, it can have its own version of the game characters in it later if it really wants to. But I think that for a franchise like this to succeed, it doesn't have to necessarily be in continuity with the original games or anything. It's not something that requires, I guess, that level of like fan loyalty. There was a very successful brand of Resident Evil movies in the early 2000s that were pretty dissimilar from the games and just had like an OC played by the director's wife as the main character, and those still made millions of dollars. So
but in the same breath, you have an army of people who are just calling you an incel if you don't like some piece of shit movie that nobody will actually go and watch.
Again, calling it a piece of shit, even though he hasn't seen it yet, it's not out, saying nobody's going to go and watch it, even though he's pointing towards a crowd of people that genuinely seem like they want to. Just completely dishonest.
That's the thing, if you made some badass action horror masterpiece starring somebody like Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy himself, then you might have gotten some asses in seats. But with whatever the hell this is, I don't think anybody's going and watching this. And there's a lot of reasons for that I'm about to get into, but one of the main ones that people need to realize, and it's kind of a harsh truth that even some Resident Evil fans don't want to admit, is that the original trilogy on the PS1 and part 4, 5 and 6 of Resident Evil were all excellent and masterpieces in gaming because they knew how to perfectly balance action and horror, create an awesome setting that was dark and atmospheric, and give you badass male and female action heroes. Since the original PS1 games, the action movie style has always been an aspect of the games. And when you're missing that massively and you're going against with everything in your power that exact way of thinking, whatever it is doesn't deserve to be called Resident Evil.
This is a completely brain-dead take. I'm sorry. The world of Resident Evil has to have people like this in it. Not every person is Leon Kennedy. Not every person is an action hero protagonist that is suplexing zombies to death and punching boulders until they explode. Like, I think the approach to a Resident Evil franchise that takes the evil of the Umbrella Corporation and the wicked monstrosities that they create seriously can be awesome. And especially if you eventually evolve it to having some sort of badass main character protagonist that can fight these things, like a Chris Redfield or a Leon Kennedy. That could work for a sequel, even. I'm fine with that potentially as, like, a complaint after you see the movie, saying that there is no sort of, like, logical way that humanity could fight against these things or whatever. But that's a power scaling argument based on a movie you haven't seen. It's completely dishonest the way that he's currently arguing it. And then the allusion that he makes to Terminator there, saying that, like, the action horror, I don't know, DNA of the franchise is somehow lost. Genuinely, how? It is an action horror movie. It is a horror movie with action scenes in it that they're trying to make.
I wanted to do a Resident Evil movie where you're not following a badass with military training. You're following your average gamer like me. I wouldn't call this like a zombie movie necessarily. As much as 4 is the game I've played the most, I don't think it's very scary. You know, 4 does not do nearly as much atmospheric heavy lifting.
He's right. Resident Evil 4 is awesome, and the aesthetic is great, but the aesthetic is less scary because Leon is a much more competent protagonist by the 4th game in the franchise. He's had I don't know how to explain this. Like, by the time that he first appears in that game, he is too cool and is doing too much shit to, like, genuinely be afraid of, like, individual enemies in that game. Like, you do become an action hero star by the end of that game to a crazy extent. And it is less scary in comparison to, like, RE1 and RE2, where it's all about, like, ammo management and stealth, and, like, you genuinely gotta let some zombies live because you don't got the ammo for it, etc. Like, you don't really get in situations like that in RE4. Like, it's less scary by that metric. It genuinely is. You're being intellectually dishonest by not engaging with the words that he's saying and cutting up this interview in such a dishonest way.
And not only am I talking about this piece of garbage, I'm also talking about games like Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9. Everyday people being the main character in Resident Evil just isn't a thing. Anybody who's ever played one of the original games knows that. Jill Valentine in the Spencer Mansion wasn't a helpless damsel in distress who, I don't know, was working behind an office or working in a Starbucks and decided to just be in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield in the original Resident Evil 2, yeah, Leon was a rookie cop and Claire wasn't some super soldier. They were actually both badasses who could say one-liners and be action heroes. And that's something that these stupid people want to complain about and say that RE4 made it an action franchise, when in reality the franchise has always been about action and horror, just like the movies that they were directly based off of. Like Dawn of the Dead could be called a horror action movie exactly like the original Resident Evil 1 and 2 on the PS1. So basically what I'm trying to say, when the franchise started off with insanely badass games that were like something out of an 80s anime, like Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, you can't start complaining about the action aspects and you can't start bringing in characters that are just everyday people. That's not how it works.
But these types of everyday people exist in the Resident Evil universe. This is just a changing of POV from the main character of the games. if all we have had is power fantasy, ridiculous, over-the-top, shark-jumping bullshit with Resident Evil on the big screen, Zach Cregger is trying to take a more stripped-back, grounded approach with a more realistic main character. We can have one of these super soldiers appear later if you really want to, Ranting for Vengeance, but can we at least have one serious, scary Resident Evil movie that actually takes, like, the aura and atmosphere of the original games into consideration, and not just like, oh my god, what pretty boy are we gonna get to play Leon Kennedy? Could it be Timothy Chalamet? Like, this is ridiculous.
What I'm trying to get at, which is going to piss some people off, is that characters like Ethan Winters and Grace Ashcroft are complete bullshit. It's
okay, yeah, he's also doing, like, extreme RE pure, I don't even know how to say this, like, he's being so pure in his vision of the Resident Evil franchise that he doesn't even view 7, 8, and 9 as, like, real games, because they have, like, non-superpowered protagonists, basically. I'm sorry, 7, 8, and 9 are still good games. I haven't played 9 yet, so I guess I am kind of LARPing there. But 7 and 8, I can at least attest, those are good games. You could argue, I guess, their placement in the rest of the Resident Evil franchise, but I digress. He is being extremely dishonest here and trying to say that, like, oh yeah, it's complete, like, just absolutely lying out of his ass just so that way he can paint this weird narrative and try to paint anybody that disagrees with him as, like, just a fake fan or a LARPer.
a cope and a lie to say that they returned Resident Evil to the original way that the games were, because the original games protagonists were either a cop or a biker or a mercenary or just an all-around badass. So if anybody ever says that, they're lying and they haven't really played the original Resident Evil games. And speaking of people who've never played the games but act like they're the biggest fan of all time, we get to the fucktard Zach Cregger that did a full interview telling people about Resident Evil and how obsessed he is about it.
It's a love letter to the games, which I fully obsessively love. Some of the games after 4, I think, actually do a better job of building dread and suspense and terror.
I mean, 7 was basically all just a horror game in first person. It's a reason why it was like YouTube Let's Play bait back in the day. It was scary.
That's something that I really dug about 4, is that you're not just trapped in one mansion and you've got to unlock a room and then go here and then unlock another room.
Again, based. The gameplay setup of RE4 is cool. The sort of exploration-like aspect while you're also trying to protect the president's daughter or whatever is really fun.
You're moving through a world. And so that's something that I really
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
So according to the biggest RE fan of all time here, Zach, the Resident Evil games have always kind of just been first-person games that are just kind of over the shoulder sometimes. He's absolutely...
When did he say that? You dishonest ginger. Oh my god. You're just, you have to know that you're lying. He never said any of that. He didn't talk at length about any of the games being first person or anything like that, at least not in the clip that you played. And then you're over editing it and chopping it all up just to try to make it seem like he said something wrong. No, the way that the world is laid out in RE1 versus RE2 versus RE4 is different. It just is.
Be obsessed with them, except he hasn't really ever played any other one except part 4 and 8.
Really tried to incorporate just the visual language of the games into the movie. There's also, you know, a fair amount of first-person shooter stuff in this movie that is, you know, the games utilize sometimes.
Okay, cool. You can list 3 games that don't. You can also list 3 games that do. 7, 8, and 9 also do. Like, with there being 9 games in the whole franchise, minus the spin-offs, which I believe some of the spin-offs also include first-person segments, you could basically say that half of the franchise is first-person. Like, what are we on about, dude?
He never specifies whether or not he's talking about the remake, but you can take a guess to which one he actually played. And he just thought to himself, hey, I'm the biggest fan on planet Earth of Resident Evil, and I'm so utterly obsessed with these games that what if I knew jack shit about them? And I never put Leon or Chris or Jill or Claire in the movie, and instead I just made some random cuck to run around like some modern horror movie. And that's really all you see in this trailer, just this random spasticated guy running around acting nothing like a Resident Evil protagonist, and might I add, he's running away from monsters and creatures that aren't from Resident Evil. This Cregger fuckface just mentions it in passing that he just put a character from a different universe into Resident Evil.
And you see a gigantic, obese, naked, hairless man just sitting facing you. It's like, to me, it's just like, what is about to go down?
Sorry, pal. You're not my type.
I like the question there.
Instead of bringing in Nemesis,
So he never said that it was from a different franchise or anything like that. Literally all he said was that it was like something different. How is that? How is that bad? I don't get it. Yes, the movie, it's doing its own thing with the T-Virus and Umbrella's experiments. Sure. But can't really properly criticize that until the film is out. And again, there is a non-0% chance that some of the most iconic Resident Evil villains show up in the movie. Wesker could be in this. Nemesis could be in it. Like Mr. X could be in it. We genuinely don't know. Like, it's a matter of how the film uses these characters in the continuity. It is genuinely up to the filmmakers for how they use the aspects of the world building when making a film. And just because the protagonist is not some stoic Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy type, or some super hot lady, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a good movie. Like, I'm sorry. This is more just brain rot, culture war crap. There's no actual substance to what he's saying here. He's just moral grandstanding, pretending as if he has a more notable opinion than anybody else, acting as if he is somehow the expert of the Resident Evil franchise, even though he disregards half of it as the LARPer nonsense. And that's how he plans on continuing to accrue viewers, is just straight up lying to your face and acting as if he knows better than even you about franchises that you love.
or the Tyrant, this prick just took a character from a book he liked and injected it into the story.
Part of the inspiration for the look of this guy comes from the book Blood Meridian. There's a character called the Judge in that book who's a...
Wait, you're getting mad that he took visual inspiration from the Judge from Blood Meridian? One of the most twisted, evil characters in fiction? Okay. If you wanted to prove your point before, you should have played this part of the clip, because this at least is bringing up something else from a different continuity. Poor editing on your part. Secondly, this is an awesome visual reference. I'm sorry. Referencing the Judge in a Resident Evil property is insane.
Described as like a 7-foot tall, maybe albino hairless man, and I love the image of that guy, and so this is just my little nod to one of my favorite books of all time. And
that makes no fucking sense. You're not obsessed with any Resident Evil franchise. You're not a fan of any of the games. Putting in small little Easter eggs in the background of a green herb doesn't make it accurate to the games.
Okay. But you're saying he doesn't care, or that he doesn't have any sort of obsession, but then you're pointing towards something that would obviously indicate that he cares, or in some way has fascination with the franchise, to know about the validity, the nostalgia that one may have for the green herb.
Soulless AI generated garbage that this guy spews for the entire interview, saying that in the original...
Bro, your channel is soulless. I can't say it's AI generated, because at the very least you do have the bravery to just boldface steal logos and copyright from existing manga. That is, I guess, a step above just using AI to say come up with a unique logo. You're brave enough to steal.
Original Resident Evil games, all you were doing was just walking around a tiny little mansion, and that he wanted to do the opposite and build a massive world. What the fuck does that even mean? If you're supporting this guy and what he says in any way whatsoever...
You're taking him out of context. He was obviously talking about the difference in the gameplay presentation of Resident Evil 1 versus Resident Evil 4, which is objectively true. The way that the map is laid out is a lot different, and it's a lot more exterior areas, and the aesthetic and vibe is a lot different. Sorry, if you don't want to contend with reality, I don't know why you post on YouTube, where those of us in reality have to watch it.
However, you're actively attacking the original Resident Evil games. I just have a question for all those higher ups in the office who control the slop that we get fed. And guys like Zach Cregger, do you think that anybody wants to watch a movie with some random protagonist who acts like an everyday person trying to survive some crappy horror situation that's just boring and not one bit scary?
The outbreak of Raccoon City is not a crappy horror situation. It is, in fact, one of the most famous video game horror inciting incidents of all time. And secondly, yes, I do, you ginger bitch. And if you guys like this video, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. I know that this was a sort of back-to-back, doing a 1-2 punch on this kid again, but you guys clearly, one, and enjoy the content, and two, it frustrates me to see the way that people genuinely fall for this type of like culture war nonsense. You can have more nuanced or complex opinions that don't just come to you from some YouTuber, but sadly it seems at least 36,000 people that are Ranting For Vengeance subscribers are actually willing to hear out this kid and just believe what he has to say, even though he has no reason to know any more than you. This kid is obviously a LARPer for most of the things that he talks about, and he bases so much of what he has to say and feel off of just pure hatred and spite. If he has anything negative to say about anything, he cannot eloquate his opinion. Hell, honestly, he can't even say why he likes something. Anytime he tries to talk about a comic, a video game, or a movie that he enjoys, he fails to describe why he enjoys it in the same way that he fails to describe why things that he dislikes are bad. It's a complete failure on his part to verbalize why anything that he has to say is valuable. Instead, he just points towards a hypothetical person in the audience and says, "You there, you're a fake fan, you're a LARPer." But anyway, if you guys like this video, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. Tell me things down below that you want me to respond to next, besides just Ranting For Vengeance, and let me know what you guys want to see from me in the future. Thank you so much, and I hope all of you have a blessed day. See ya.